Now with all the latest stories making the headlines this evening, it's the ITV News at 10.
A promise from the police in Merseyside. They will be relentless in finding Ellie Edwards' killers. The 23-year-old was shot outside a pub on Christmas Eve. The Chief Constable said tonight those responsible were cowards. More than 60 now dead in the US blizzards, with more snow forecast. The UK is braced for more train strikes as the ongoing dispute disrupts some Christmas plans. And
this is ITV News with Nina Hossain.
good evening. The Chief Constable of Merseyside Police says her force will be relentless in investigating what she called the sickening and heartbreaking shooting on Christmas Eve. Serena Kennedy said those responsible for killing Ellie Edwards were cowards who deserved to spend every Christmas behind bars. The 26-year-old beautician was shot in the head outside a pub in Wallasey on Merseyside. 2 people are still being questioned over her murder tonight. From Wallasey, our North of England reporter Kelly Foran reports.
To my beautiful Ellie, you are the light of my life, you will never be gone. The heartbreaking handwritten message from Ellie's mum and dad are among the many tributes being left outside the pub where she was shot and killed.
I've known Ellie since she was very young. We've always lived around the corner, close family members. It's just a total tragedy that shook everyone in Wallasey, mainly New Brighton, where Ellie was from and grew up.
Witnesses say they heard multiple gunshots at the entrance to the pub.
We thought it might have been fireworks or someone knocking on the shutters. But yeah, it was quite frightening.
My son was in there, but a couple of hours beforehand. It's really shocking, it's really upsetting.
The mobile police station has been out in Wallasey today providing support for people living in this village. The shop next door to the pub is preparing to reopen, although things are far from back to normal here.
This is probably the least likely place we'd ever expect it to happen, to be honest, really. You know, it is becoming a worry in the Merseyside now. It seems to spread all over. So it is a worry. Yeah.
Police say a 30-year-old man and a 19-year-old woman are still being questioned. The 2 suspects are from Tranmere and Rock Ferry, both less than 5 miles from the murder scene. Merseyside police say since this happened, their officers have been working round the clock to disrupt those involved in serious organised crime on the Wirral. They've made 4 further arrests, and the Chief Constable has described those involved in this shooting as cowards, saying they're using firearms to resolve petty and pathetic issues. The beautician was loved by her friends, and her colleagues at this beauty studio say they're lost for words. Another man is still being treated for his injuries in hospital. Meanwhile, friends of Ellie say her memory will live on. Kelly Foran, ITV News.
A man who was stabbed to death on the dance floor of a nightclub in Birmingham on Boxing Day has been named tonight as non-league footballer Cody Fisher. His family said in a statement, "They have broken our hearts." One of his former teams, Bromsgrove Sporting, said he was a great friend and offered their deepest condolences to his family. Mr Fisher was stabbed at the Crane nightclub just before midnight last night and died at the scene. Across North America, more than 60 people have now died in the winter storms described as the blizzard of the century. The worst of the weather has passed for now, but more snow is forecast, and officials fear they may yet find more people who have lost their lives in the freezing conditions. From the US, our correspondent Robert Moore reports.
The great winter storm of the Christmas weekend hit Buffalo the hardest. Hundreds of drivers had to abandon their vehicles and try and make it to safety on their own. This city in upstate New York is familiar with heavy snowfalls. But this was on a scale not seen for many years. Police and emergency workers were simply not able to reach some of those most in need. And the death toll has continued to rise. Some bodies are still being found in stranded cars, others in snowdrifts.
As the snow begins to get moved, and as we see in the week when the snow starts to melt, we fully expect that we are going to recover more bodies. We're pretty certain that there's going to be more deaths uncovered.
In a few cases, looting broke out, with those responsible confident the police wouldn't have the resources to be able to respond.
Did you buy it? I'm trying to buy it. All right, put it back. Put everything back. Come on.
Leaving this store owner trying to defend his business, even as the storm was raging outside.
Looting, when people are losing their lives in this harsh winter storm, is just absolutely reprehensible. I don't know how these people can even live with themselves, how they can look at themselves in the mirror. They are the lowest of the low.
At its peak, this bomb cyclone, as the weather pattern was called, impacted nearly half of America, on the very weekend when tens of millions of people were trying to gather for the holidays. It led to thousands of flight cancellations and continuing travel chaos, with airlines still struggling to get passengers to their destinations. On the Great Lakes, the icy winds certainly produced some stunning ice and snow formations. But this will be remembered as the storm that left chaos in its wake and disrupted the plans of much of the nation. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
Here, train services have been slowly returning to normal after the latest round of strike action came to an end. But passengers are being warned there is still more disruption to come. A whole week of strikes is due to begin just as people return to work in the new year. Our correspondent Joel Hill sent this update from King's Cross Station in London a short time ago.
Members of the RMT union who work for Network Rail ended their latest walkout at 6 o'clock this morning, but passengers continue to experience delays, setbacks and frustration for several hours. This was the first train to leave London for Edinburgh this morning. The 10:30 a.m. service was 30 minutes late, and for many passengers there was standing room only. The advice from Network Rail remains only travel if absolutely necessary for the next 2 weeks. That's because the RMT's members plan to strike again on the 3rd, 4th, 6th and 7th of January. Meanwhile, train drivers who are members of the ASLEF union will stage a 24-hour walkout on Thursday the 5th of January. And strike action by TESA on the 28th and 29th of December and the 12th of January will affect Great Western and West Midlands train routes and services on the Elizabeth line in London. Despite all the disruption, the unions insist they have public opinion firmly on their side. Not surprisingly, the government sees this dispute rather differently. Tonight, a spokesperson told us a fair and reasonable offer has been made and accepted by 2 unions, and added the British public deserve better than to have their festive period impacted by strikes. But unless common ground can be found in the next few days, I'm afraid the early new year is looking as if there'll be severe disruption.
Joel Hill's reporting there. 4 people have been injured following a suspected gas explosion at a home in Worcestershire. Emergency services were called to the house in Evesham shortly after 5 o'clock tonight. 5 neighbouring properties were evacuated and a police cordon remains in place while officers respond to the blast. Police are searching for a 13-year-old girl from Basingstoke who has been missing since last week. Lila Jane Lake, the cousin of the Olympic high jumper Morgan Lake, was last seen on Wednesday. Her father tonight pleaded for her to get in contact. And the North East Ambulance Service has declared a critical incident for the second time in 9 days. The status means it cannot provide usual critical services because of what it called unprecedented pressure. The government is spending £18 million to help us save a few pounds. One suggestion in a new campaign is to switch off lights that aren't needed. The ad was originally blocked by the then Prime Minister Liz Truss, who regarded it as too much of a nanny state intervention. Today, critics simply said the money could be better spent on direct help for families. Our political reporter Amy Lewis has the full story.
This is a 30-second ad. That's not long, but it's long enough to do something that could save you money on your energy bills.
As Christmas viewing goes, it might not be the most festive, but this advert could, perhaps, help you become more frugal.
Change this, reduce that.
The government is spending millions to try and get us to use and spend less on our energy.
Definitely turn that off. What? I unplugged that.
And they're making every effort to be seen to set an example.
This winter, there are a number of different things we can do to lower our bills and keep our homes warmer, like switching off appliances at the wall, reducing the boiler flow temperature, and using low-cost draft protection.
This year saw energy bills reach a record high after Russia restricted energy supplies following its invasion of Ukraine. In response, the government introduced its energy price guarantee, which until April caps typical annual household bills at £2,500. But the launch of an £18 million public information campaign was blocked in October by the then Prime Minister Liz Truss, who opposed so-called nanny state intervention. But the ad has finally aired.
Telling people to turn down their heating and you know, close off drafts is pretty much common sense.
What do you think the government should be doing to help people with their energy bills?
Well, the government should have been further ahead with making sure that we are energy secure in this country. They should have been insulating homes, had a far-reaching home insulation programme. They should have had targeted help with warm homes discounts.
I'll close all of these at night.
With many facing rising bills again next year, critics argue the government should be using its energy and money elsewhere. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
Some of England's World Cup stars made a goal-scoring return to action in the Premier League tonight. Marcus Rashford helped Manchester United to victory over Nottingham Forest, while Mason Mount was on target for Chelsea, as Chris Scudder now reports. Finally tonight, how about this for an unexpected moment on a cricket field?
Let's have a look at this, Flem. Here it comes the camera. Nortje walking quietly to his spot. Bang!
Bang indeed. That's the South African bowler Anrich Nortje being hit by a TV camera during his team's test match against Australia in Melbourne. This was the view from the camera itself. Luckily, Nortje wasn't seriously hurt, and the broadcaster later apologised, saying it was human error by the operator. That's all for now. The weather is next. But for me and the whole team here, good night.
Feel good weather